Hello and welcome to the latest Safer West Mercia podcast. My name is John Campion and I'm the West Mercia Police and Crime Commissioner, and I'm joined today by a very special guest. Jane, did you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, yes, thank you. I'm Jane Chaplain. I am an independent advisor to West Mercia Police, and I chair their strategic meeting and their LGBTQ meeting.
So, Jane, really grateful for you joining us today, and your introduction full of lots of things that perhaps the listeners might ordinarily be aware existed. Things like IAGs and those kinds of things. So, just tell a little bit about your role. Maybe how you got into it as well, and why you want to give your time to doing this in the system that keeps us safe.
Yes, I got into it because actually I was asked whether I would be part of the IAG. And I guess, like everybody, I didn't know very much about it to start with. But what I found actually was it was a good opportunity to bring things into the police organisation, which otherwise might not be particularly well known or particularly understood. And also to actually have a group of people from the local area, or in this case, the LGBT group, who would be able to do the same sort of thing. And it really was a good opportunity to be part of a scheme that allows you to do that.
It's one of those roles, isn't it, that it isn't widely known about, but actually is a really important part of maintaining the consent of the public, the voice of the public, that public sense check within the work that we do. You're an individual who's volunteered to give your time. You're even now chair of the group. Is there something in your life, your personal experience, that made you want to do it? It was the driver to say, actually, these are the things that I've either experienced or am aware of that I think I can bring to the table. Because it's not decision making, is it? It's not an executive role in terms of let's do this rather than this. It's about making sure things are considered, analysed, and different viewpoints taken.
Indeed, it's about looking at what you're doing, being able to advise you, to be a critical friend, if you like, to the organisation, so that good practice can be developed. Good practice can be praised as well, which is also an important part of the role. But also then to bring concerns, perhaps criticism of the way something has been dealt with, to look at how you deal with things like hate crime, how you deal with people in the community, and things like body-worn video. We look at that and we can make comment on that sort of work that you're doing. My background was in a role which is not dissimilar to that of the police, and so from my point of view, I could bring that experience with me and help you, basically. It's
one of those things, isn't it, that we're all individuals. It's our experiences and our differences and the challenges in life that have that shape who we are and our approach to things. And that's why I particularly like our system around IAGs, to ensure that the bit that you've just talked about, over not just the things that need fixing, but also recognising that things that perhaps are positive and maybe need to be rolled out in different ways. You're part of the system of policing, but you're not the police. You're linked to the police in a voluntary role. Do you think there are greater ways that the citizenry, the wider citizenry, can play a role in policing to make sure that the police are truly representative of us as a community in all the very different parts of it?
I think it's very important for the police as an organisation to be accepting that people like me, as an independent, coming in and having a look at what's going on, are able to make that connection, and having made that connection, to actually use what they get from it to benefit the way the organisation works. But of course, then being independent, I can actually bring my views or the views of people that are part of the community to the table, to the discussion, and to inform and to actually bring things to the police awareness, if you like. But also how individual officers actually react to situations and perhaps help, perhaps train, perhaps guide, perhaps support in those circumstances. Because not every police officer or not every police organisation necessarily has the knowledge, experience, or perhaps understanding of particular events or particular people within the community. So that's part of the IAG role, the independent role. And it's also why we need the cross-section of people coming into the advisory group so that that information can be part of the group.
It's one of my priorities as commissioner is to make sure that that policing reflects the communities that we serve, and when the community looks at the police service, it can recognise itself amongst it, and it's not just about the physical differences; it's also about attitudes and others. And I think that is an important role. You've been doing this for a while in terms of giving your time. Is there a particular issue that you think to yourself, our involvement in that either was really challenging and really tested yourself, or indeed was really challenging back to the force, and this was our worthwhile contribution to it? Is there something that sticks out in your mind, Jane?
I think particularly the question of hate crime and how the police actually deal with it. And since I've been a member, looking at the way in which the police do deal with hate crime, I believe has actually improved because we've been able to share that knowledge, because I can bring my knowledge of my life, if you like, into that arena, and so can other people within the group. How you report things, how you record things, how you deal with the outcomes. And that has changed in the time that I've been an IAG member. And I like to think that will continue to develop and improve from where the organisation may have been some years ago.
Listening to you, that, Jane, gives me a bit of hope, because somebody hearing and somebody like yourself saying, actually, I can see the progress. That for me is a heartwarming thing, because you've got to have hope, haven't you, that things will change. But some of that is built on the confidence that things have changed. And I think your particular area as an IAG around sexuality, and gender-based challenges that are also associated with some of that, I think are a fascinating part of not only the police journey, but the societal journey. And I think it's a really great thing for the police to do in terms of taking that sense check. And we're very proud of the volunteers that are involved, they're stepping up and wanting to do, because there's no pay, is there? There's no this is the remuneration or accolades for doing it. It is just for that contribution. And you do other things in terms of the wider system. You're also part of the the custody visiting scheme as well, aren't you, Jane? And play another role there. So it's really great to see that active citizenry. If you were PCC for a day, you were into high office with the responsibility and others that I've got, what would be the thing that you go to first in terms of taking your attention? What would be the thing that you would do?
Very much see how the organisation actually works and put in thoughts as to how it could be developed in a positive way. But also look at how the budget is used and how you apply that budget to the organisation so that it is actually used in a way that really helps local communities. Because after all, that's what the police organisation is all about.
Absolutely right. And that focus on why we're here is a constant challenge, because you get dragged into the big corporate arena of running a big organisation, but that constant reminder as to why we're here is a really important one. It's fascinating you pick that out, because I think that's one of my biggest challenges is keeping that focus, because you've got to run an organisation and I've got to be the governance for it, but actually we're not there for that purpose. We're actually there for the things we're producing, which is a safer community, isn't it? We don't make widgets.
That's right.
We provide a service, and keeping that at the centre, it's a great one. What did you do in your professional world? What was some of the skill sets that you developed to bring to the IAG role?
I was working particularly in environmental health. So I was looking at housing, food and pollution standards particularly across England, and working through local authorities, and also working as an independent consultant for a number of years in that role.
It's always I love doing it with recruits when they join the police. I love doing it with our volunteers. I love doing it with the staff that join the organisation, hearing the varied backgrounds that are involved. And I know, talking to some of your other IAG colleagues, their backgrounds also so varied, and it really does, I think, add to the very rich nature of the challenge, the debate, the discussion, the recognition that the IAGs bring. As Commissioner, I'm incredibly grateful that you want to give your time, Jane, and your colleagues for the work that they do, and I'm absolutely certain the contribution helps the service to West Mercia communities improve, which I think is what it's all about. And hearing that balance between the recognition of what's good and what's not yet great is an important one. And I want to thank you for joining today, Jane, to talk about that on our podcast.
Also, thank you.
And I'd like to thank our listeners for listening to today's podcast. We've been joined by Jane Chaplain, who is one of our independent members of the independent advisory groups who advise West Mercia Police around the LGBTQ plus issues, offering the advice, guidance, challenge, support, recognition, and a really fascinating discussion. And if you're interested in a volunteering role, then if you put West Mercia Police into your search engine, there are those volunteer roles that are often available. As you've heard from Jane, a worthwhile activity. And if you think you've got something to add, please do step forward and help us make sure West Mercia is a safe place to live. Thank you very much for listening to today's Safer West Mercia podcast.